ॐ भूर्भुवः स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Namaste, my dear friends. This is video number 6 on Ramana Gita. This video starts with chapter number 11 and topic is on compatibility of jnana and siddhis. From here to verse 15, when the original question is recalled, the Muni poetically sings the glories of the Maharshi, his Sadguru. This translation, as are all the others, is in prose and therefore cannot capture the poetic feelings of the Muni's Sanskrit. 3. In you alone are found supreme abidance in the self and the clearest intellect. You are the repository of all knowledge, even as the ocean is of all waters. 4. O far famed in boyhood itself, in your 17th year, you gained the experience of the self inaccessible even to yogis. I have, however, attempted an English versification. Supreme abidance in self is found in the oases containing clear intelligence alone as ocean to waters. Akashic all is known. Far famed in youth at 17 years, we see the realized self from fear of dreaded yama free. Even yogis such a state cannot attain alone. A.R. Natarajan translation. Verse 3. In you alone is found the supreme abidance in the self and the purest mind. You are the repository of all wisdom, just as the ocean is of all waters. Verse 4. You became very famous by attaining wisdom, hard to get even for yogis, in boyhood itself, in your 17th year. Commentary. The experience referred to by the Muni is Ramana's death experience. In his 17th year, while studying in the 10th standard, Ramana had a confrontation with death, a sudden and unaccountable fear of death. Draw his mind inward to find out what death meant. In later years, he narrated his experience thus: well, then, said I to myself, this body is dead. It will be carried stiff to the burning ground, and there burnt and reduced to ashes. But with the death of the body, am I dead? Is this body I? This body is silent and inert, but I feel the full force of my personality and even the sound I within myself apart from the body. I am therefore the deathless spirit untouched by death. From then onwards she remained always in the state of from then onwards he remained always in the state of steady wisdom. Even though Ramana remained silent for several years thereafter, his authentic greatness was such that His guidance was sought by earnest seekers of truth. Known as Brahmana Swami, his fame spread even when he was hardly out of his teens. By Western reckoning, he was 16 years of age when he became a sage. Ramana Maharshi and the Path of Knowledge by Arthur Osborne, page 90. Professor K. Swaminathan and Sri Viswanath Swami, translation from 3 to verse 15. When the original question is recalled, the Muni poetically sings the glories of the Maharshi, his Sadguru. This translation, as are all the others, is in prose and therefore it cannot recapture completely the beauty of the Muni's Sanskrit. 5. Who can describe, O Lord, your state of being in which all these visible objects appear as mere shadows? 6. To those drowning in this terrible samsara, tossed hither and thither, and struggling to cross this great suffering, you alone are the sovereign refuge. This verse has become a favorite amongst many devotees. An attempted versification follows. Compared to thy flawless being, one alone, all things are like merest shadows, even stone. As the waves of samsara drown the soul, which is hither and thither, tossed and hurled, struggling to swim across this suffering world. Thou art our sovereign refuge, perfect whole. A.R. Natarajan. Translation. Verse 5. O Lord, is it possible to describe your state in which the entire visible world is seen as shadows? Commentary. Two verses by Ramana himself, one in Ulladu Nerpadu and the another in Upadesa Sarm, extol the Jnani. He asks, who can understand the state of one who has dissolved his ego and is abiding always in the self? Upadesa Sarm, verse 15, Sat Darshanam, verse 31. Verse 6. You are the supreme refuge for those tossed about hither and thither, immersed in this terrible world and struggling to cross this great sorrow. Professor K. Swaminathan and Sri Viswanatha Swami, translation from 3 to verse 15. When the original question is recalled, the Muni exuberantly and poetically sings the glories of the Maharshi, his Sadguru. This translation, as are all the others, is in prose and therefore cannot recapture the beauty of the Muni's Sanskrit. 7. O Brahma, through God given vision, I behold you again and again as Subramanya, the best of Brahmanyas in human form. 8. Lord, not in Swami Malai, nor in Tirutani hill, nor on top of Venkatachala do you now dwell. In reality, you are in Arunachala. 9. O Lord, you taught in ancient days the secret Bhuma Vidya, knowledge of the ground of being, to Maharshi Narada, who served as a disciple. Here, Natarajan translation, verse 7. By the divine vision given to me, I see you again and again as Subramanya, the foremost among the knowers of Brahma in the human form. Verse 8. You are not residing in Swami Malai, nor in Tirutani, nor on the top of Venkatachala. You dwell now in reality in Arunachala. Verse 9. Once you taught the secret of the science of the self to Maharshi Narada, who served you as a disciple. Commentary. The Muni describes his vision made possible by the opening of the eye of wisdom through divine grace. Chandogya Upanishad refers to the teaching of the science of self to Narada by Sanat Kumara. Narada was well versed in scriptural knowledge but could not attain the bliss of self abidance. The secret of it was learned by him from Sanat Kumara, with whom the Muni identifies Ramana. There is also an autobiographical touch in this verse. The Muni had performed severe austerities, repeated sacred syllables times without number, and was vastly erudite in the scriptures. Yet peace eluded him till the secret of self-knowledge through search for the source of thought and sound was revealed to him by Ramana, Bhagwan and Naina. Page 4. Professor K. Swaminathan and Sri Viswanatha Swami translation from 3 to verse 15. When the original question is recalled, the Muni poetically and exuberantly sings the glories of the Maharshi, his Sadguru. This translation, as are all the others, is in prose and therefore cannot fully recapture the beauty of the Muni's Sanskrit. 10. Those learned in the Vedas say you are Brahmrasi Sanat Kumara. Those learned in the Agamas acclaim you as Subramanya, the chief of gods. 11. Only the names differ, not the person. Sanat Kumara and Sakanda are in reality but synonymous for you. 12. Once before born as Kumarila, the best of Brahmins, you re-established the Dharma propounded in the Vedas. 13. O Bhagwan, when Jains caused confusion in the Dharma, you came down as Jnana Sambandha in Dravida Desha and established the path of devotion. Versification. Vedic sages praise thee as Sanat Kumara. Scriptural scribes claim thee as Subramanya. Synonymously, all hail thee as Lord Sakanda. Best of Brahmins, bright Kumarila reborn. You restored our Dharma, fire flame of Vedic dawn. Among doubting Jains in Dravid Desa, your descent did clear the inward path as Jnana Sambandha saint. O glorious one who guards our Dharma here on earth from those fixed in scriptural learning's arid dearth. A.R. Natarajan translation verse 10. Those learned in Vedas say you are Brahmrisi Sanat Kumara. while those steeped in agmas acclaim you as Subramanya, the chief of gods. Verse 11. Only the names differ, not the person. Sanat Kumara and Sakanda are only synonymous. You. Verse 12. Once before you were born as Kumarila, the best of Brahmins, and re-established the dharma set out in the Vedas. Verse 13. When there was confusion in dharma, you were born in Tamil Nadu as Jnana Sambandha and established the path of devotion. Verse 14. O glorious one, you have once again come back to earth to proclaim knowledge of Brahma, obstructed by those satisfied with scriptural learning only. Professor K. Swaminathan and Sri Vishwanatha Swami translation. The Muni now prepares us after his poem in praise of Bhagwan to return to his original question. 15. Lord, you have removed many doubts raised by disciples. May you be pleased to clear this doubt of mine also. 16. O Lord of Manis, are Jnana and Siddhis mutually incompatible, or is there some relation between the two? The Muni now prepares us after his poem in praise of Bhagwan to return to his original question. Versification 15 and 16. Lord, clearing myriads of doubts of your many devotees, dispel this question causing me vexation and turmoil. Must jnana and siddhis part as water doth from oil, or may they confluent flow in one who really sees? From the Muni's biography, it is noted that he possessed many siddhis as a consequence of his strenuous tapas and yogic practice, so this question was important for him. A.R. Natarajan translation. Verse 15. Master, you have dispelled several doubts of disciples. Please remove a doubt of mine. Verse 16. Are wisdom and siddhis powers opposed to each other, or is there some relationship between them? Commentary. This verse refers to powers and their relation to knowledge. Siddhis or powers like clairvoyance, thought reading, and the like, which sometimes occur during serious spiritual practices, are in fact distractions from the inward movement, for they involve the use of the mind and they externalize it. In the Ramana path of self inquiry, the use of the mind is exclusively for paying attention to the root I thought. In the end, the mind would get destroyed in this process in the same way as a stick used for stirring the funeral pyre would also be consumed by the fire. The question would naturally arise as to how powers which are mental could survive in the state of wisdom attained through self inquiry. If they could coexist, the further question as to how the two are interrelated would arise. Professor K. Swaminathan and Sri Vishwanath Swami translation. The Muni has now returned to his original question, thus praised and questioned by me. Bhagwan Ramana looked intently at me and said, 18. One who is well established in Sahaja Sthiti performs by his very nature inviolable tapas day by day. There is no sloth in Sahaja Sthiti, one established in the innate self and abiding therein. Versification. Bhagwan Ramana looked at me with his penetrating gaze. For those in Sahaja Sthiti, tapas ensues throughout his days. Sahaja Sthiti is not a state of tarpor in which to laze. A.R. Natarajan translation. Verse 17. Thus praised and questioned by me, Bhagwan Ramana looked at me majestically and said, commentary. One of the time honored modes of directing grace on the disciple is through the eyes of the Guru. Ramana would often look intently at the questioner, remain silent for some time before replying in order that it may have its full impact. For the words themselves are inadequate to communicate the spiritual power of the force of Sadguru's experience is conveyed by such a look. We have description of it by M.A. Pigot, the first Western lady devotee to visit Sri Ramanasramam. I tried to concentrate my mind. Suddenly I became conscious that Ramana Maharshi's eyes were fixed on me. They seemed literally like burning coals of fire piercing through me. Mountain Path 1970 M.A. Pigot. Verse 18. The natural state is free from sloth. One established firmly in it is incessantly performing the most difficult penance spontaneously. Commentary. Ramana first explains the state of knowledge and understanding of which would enable one to see those powers in their proper perspective. It implies firm abidance in the natural state. Bhagwan has pointed out to Devarta that discovering one's own true nature is the paramount duty for those desiring the highest. Ramana has also stated that when sense objects are discarded, one abides as a pure flame of knowledge, and that this is the natural state. In that state, silence, born of destruction of tendencies, reigns supreme. In this verse, it is affirmed that from abidance in this state, the natural state is the most difficult austerity. Such penance is, however, termed effortless. Why? Because the sense of doership, the thought that one is performing tapas is absent, it being a state in which there is no moment of thought at all. Where is the need for tapas or penance? For such a one, the penance is natural, like it is for fire to burn or living beings to breathe. As the adjective spontaneously, it is termed as difficult, for it represents the state of freedom beyond the mental states of waking, dream, and deep sleep. To the onlooker, the state of the wise would appear inert when all thought movements cease. Hence, it is explained that it is not so, for one is pure consciousness in that state. Intelligence is then sharp like the tip of kusa grass, for it is unhampered by attachments. Ramana Gita chapter 3 verse 3. Professor K. Swaminathan and Sri Vishwanatha Swami translation. The Muni has now returned to his original question 19 in inviolable tapas is nothing but natural, effortless abidance in the self. By such incessant tapas, fresh ripeness, fresh ripeness comes from moment to moment. 20. By such ripeness, siddhis may in course of time come to the seer, and if prarabdha lies that way, even a jnani may sport such powers. Versification. The sage's tapas is to rest in the natural state and effortlessly free, attain a peak so great that siddhis may rise through ripeness of his fate. One firmly settled in the self sports as he may dictate. A.R. Natarajan translation verse 19. Natural abidance in the self alone is difficult penance. By such daily penance, one is ripe from moment to moment. Commentary. The process of ripening in wisdom is usually associated with the stage of spiritual effort or upasana, when self knowledge is intermittent and not steady or permanent. The jnani who abides in the self is fully ripe. There is no incompleteness in his knowledge. The question therefore arises as to how ripening from moment to moment can apply to a jnani. It could only mean that by reason of their not slipping from the natural state, such ones are always ripe and their perception is total, the ripeness being the automatic feature of their state. Verse 20. Powers come to the seer by such ripeness. He will sport such powers only if so fated. Commentary. To think that a jnani is devoid of power because he does not display it would be ignorance. For the onlookers, some jnanis are seen to be performing miracles visibly by making even the dead, making even the dead alive. Some others are still and motionless like a waveless ocean and do not exercise these powers which they possess in equal measure. Why this difference? Ramana says that it is because of their karma that some jnanis sport the power. This raises many issues. Where is the karma for those who have destroyed triple karma, sanchita, prarabdha, and agami? It is true that some schools of thought take the view that such portion of the karma which has begun to bear fruit on birth continues as long as the body lasts. But Ramana does not subscribe to this. In his view, when one enters the heart by self inquiry and cuts out the root of the sense of doership, then all karma comes to an end. So the question arises as to what does Ramana mean by stating that a Jnani exercises powers because he is so fated. This is from the point of the onlookers, not the wise one, because others see the body of the wise person going through experiences similar to theirs. They presume he is also subject to fate's domain. Similarly, though Jnani's mind is dead and he cannot exercise any power by will because he is in fact displaying such powers, it could be said that he is doing so by reason of vestiges of his karma which has not exhausted itself. Sat Darshanam, verse 38, while clarifying the doubts of Humphreys, Ramana points out that great ones like Christ, while exercising powers, were not conscious that they were doing so. They were merely channels of divine power. Since sense of doership is extinct, the exercise of powers by some and not by others is only due to the play of cosmic forces. Glimpses F.H. Humphreys, page 25. Professor K. Swaminathan and Sri Viswanatha Swami, translation 21. Just as to the says the world appears as nothing but the self, even so the play of siddhis is regarded by him as nothing other than the self. 22. If prarabdha does not lie that way, the sage thought, the sage though full of power is ever still as the waveless ocean. Versification. Just as to the sage, the self appears as nothing but the world. So the sports of siddhis are as the powers of self unfurled. If his feet does not move in that way of preordained motion, the sage, although full of power, is still like the waveless ocean. A.R. Natarajan, translation, VS 21. The wise do not see the world as apart from the self. Even while exercising powers, they do not regard it as other than the self. Commentary. The vision of the wise is unitary. There are no others for them, all is one self. The powers too are integrated to it. Verse 22. The wise one whose fate does not lie that way remains motionless like a waveless ocean even though he is full of power. That is not fated to sport powers. Verse 20. Commentary. Apparently, the one who is actually seen to be exercising powers is the one having them. But it is not so. Whether the Jnani exercises it or not, he is the repository of all power, just as the ocean is the repository of all rivers. It is because of this fact that even though the Jnani has no sankalpa, a specific desire even to help or intervene in the course of events, as soon as a matter is brought to his notice, automatic divine activity flows from him. Ramana explained to a devotee that the very presence can do wonders, given peace of mind and liberation to ripe souls. The Jnani does save his devotees not by thought which is non-existent for him but by his very presence. The analogy of the ocean is given to indicate the majesty of his state. Mountain Path, January 1966. Professor K. Swaminathan and Sri Viswanatha Swami, translation. Abiding in his own natural state, he does not go seeking anything else. Abidance in the self is the sum total of all powers. 24. Effortless tapas is termed the sahaja state. In that state, it is thought powers arise through ripeness, versification. He seeks nothing else, abiding in the natural state. This is the summation of all powers, so doth the sage relate. Effortless tapas is termed as samadhi seja. These are the words of wisdom from Bhagavan Ramana. Ramana Gita translation and commentary by E.R. Natarajan, Chapter 2 on compatibility of Jnana and Siddhis, verse 23. Abiding in the natural state, he does not go searching in any other path. Self-avoidance is the sum total of all powers. Commentary. The powers which dazzle the mind, clairvoyance, clairaudience, etc., involve the use of the mind. A search for them deflects one from the search for the self. The possession of these powers does not make for a happier things, happier life, nor does it bring about an attitudinal change in dealing with persons, events, and things. Ramana would remark humorously that while the magician deludes others, he himself is not caught in the illusion, whereas the one who exercises powers not only deludes others but in the end is caught up in it as well. Ramana is emphatic that the only true power, the miracle siddhi, is self-abidance, and that all others are comparable only to dreams. The other miracles are like dreams which last till waking when one understands the true nature of the mind through self-inquiry. He wakes up from the dream that mental powers are worth seeking, as far greater power can be had by holding on to the self. A man who abides steadily in his own natural state becomes an heir to all power, and the necessity for seeking powers elsewhere would not arise at all. Ramana laughs at the attitude of those madmen who, without realizing the power which animates them, expect to attain all supernatural powers. This reminds one of the story of a lame man who said, "If I am spotted on my feet, what can the enemy do?" Sat Darshanam, verse 35, supplement to 40 verses, collected works, page 122, verse 15. Verse 24. Effortless penance is termed the natural state. It is considered that powers arise from the ripeness born of abidance in the natural state. Commentary. All powers seek the one who does not slip out from the state of wisdom. They come naturally, for the Jnani is omnipotent. Whether he shows the powers openly, impelled by momentum of karma, or imperceptibly, but surely by his very presence. Professor K. Swaminathan and Sri Kesavanath Swami translation. 25. One firmly established in the self, though surrounded by many, performs awe-inspiring tapas. For him there is no need of solitude. 26. They know nothing who think that jnana is devoid of power. For a jnani abides in his real state of being, which is the plenitude of power and all-round perfection. This ends chapter 11 A.R. Natarajan translation. Verse 25. Even though surrounded by many, one who is always established in the self is performing inviolable penance. There is no need for solitude for him. Commentary. In Nirvikalpa Samadhi, there is no outer consciousness while reveling in the self. In the case of Sahaja Samadhi or natural abidance in the self, there is awareness of the outer world, but that object awareness does not distract or deflect one's abidance in the self. Self recollectedness would always be there, like Sruti or music, and all action would be done in that current. The one in that state neither seeks company nor shuns it. He is always in solitude, for the mind is pure and sunk in the source. It is only for the practitioner, the one in quest of truth, that withdrawal or solitude and favorable environment are needed. The wise are always alone, though surrounded by a crowd. Verse 26. Those who consider that wisdom is devoid of power are ignorant, for the knower abides in the self, which is the source of all power and fullness of being. Commentary. Ramana is quite emphatic that the jnani, the wise one, is all powerful too. One should not be taken in by appearances, by his apparent inactivity. All powers come of their own accord to him without him having to seek them. Those who come into the orbit of his powerful presence reap the fruits in material prosperity, in quickened search for truth, and in escaping the bondage to karma. Since the wise one is consciousness itself, he taps the source of all power. Chapter 11 concluded. Sanskrit version in Sri Ramana's handwriting can be seen in photo file Ramana Gita album. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Professor K. Swaminathan and Sri Viswanath Swami. Translation 1. On the 19th day, the high-minded Bhardvaja Kapali, great among the learned, questioned Guru Ramana. Kapali 2. O Bhagwan, in the everyday life of both the Jnani and the ignorant, one observes the tried subject, object, and cognition. 3. By what special attribute then is a Jnani superior to the ignorant one? O Lord, may you be pleased to clear this doubt of mine. The fundamental powers originating from Brahma or the Self. A.R. Natarajan translation. Verse 1. On the 19th Kapali of the Bhardwaja lineage, eminent among the learned, questioned Guru Ramana. Verse 2. In the daily life of both the wise and the ignorant, one observes the tried, the seer, seen, and the act of seeing. Verse 3. Then by what special characteristic is the wise one greater than the ignorant? Please clarify this doubt of mine. Commentary. It is true that the hallmark of the wise is their equal vision. There are no walls separating them from others due to their perception of oneness. In the Sahaja or natural state, the wise one cognizes the world. There is no loss of body consciousness. If there is awareness of the body, then the question would arise as to how his perception is different from that of the ignorant person who functions with body I am idea. For the onlooker, it would appear prima facie that for the wise also the tried subject, object, and act of cognition exist. The confusion arises because for all outward purposes there is no difference. The differences in the perceptions are explained by Ramana in the subsequent three verses and of chapter 11 on compatibility of jnana and siddhis, chapter 12 on Saki, Shakti. So I conclude this video at this stage. Thank you for watching this video. Next video we'll start with chapter number 12. That will be video number 7. Thank you. Namaskar.